everyone. We're so excited to be here today and talk to you. My name is Kate Lovejoy. I'm the COO and US Managing Director at Adikteev. I'm here with some of my friends from the Seattle mobile gaming industry, and we're going to talk to you about some tips and tricks for in-app retargeting. Jenny, I'll let you introduce yourself, say a few words.
Sounds good, yeah. Hey, I'm Jenny. I've been in the mobile gaming industry now for about 10 years. I manage paid retargeting at GSN Games. I've been there about a year. Previous to that, I was at Double Down Interactive, where I also managed paid retargeting. But my background also includes project management experience and business development experience, where I have a really keen eye for details and great collaboration skills that I bring to any project I work on. And I'm just really excited to be here today to share retargeting best practices with our MAU community, so thank you for coming.
And Brett, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Brett. I'm the Director of User Acquisition at Influence Mobile. I've been in the mobile gaming space for about 8 years. I preceded Jenny at Double Down, doing
Small
retargeting,
world.
so small world. I was also at Big Fish Games for about 5 years, owning and managing the retargeting and user acquisition program there. So yeah, happy to see everyone here. Glad to be here.
We're back at conferences. It's wild. We're back to it.
Back in work clothes.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, to start things off, I can tell you a little bit about what is Adikteev. We are a mobile growth engine, essentially. So we help with app retargeting and also cross-promotion. So helping you to activate, upsell, and retain your existing users. Now let's get into the good stuff. Let's get into some tips and tricks. I think one of the reasons I was most excited to talk to you two today is truly, I think you represent really an ideal retargeting partner in that you're both very willing to test and iterate, and our retargeting programs that we worked on together evolved over time, where you guys were very much in the trenches with us to define the audiences, figure out measurement, all of this. So I'm curious, what's your philosophy around retargeting? How do you approach a retargeting program at a high level?
Sure. With my background in project management, I specifically was a graphic design project management. And so I took that experience of having really great insights into what makes really strong composition and design. That was the approach that I leveraged when I first started managing retargeting. And at Double Down, when I first was involved, we didn't have evergreen creatives to run. Like maybe you had made some, but we didn't have access to them. So I was able to pick just a past marketing creative that I thought that we could repurpose for a paid retargeting creative. And it ended up working amazingly and was a hit it out of the park creative that we then tried to iterate on, like how do we repurpose this? How do we pick out the elements that worked to make it work as a retargeting creative for future creatives? So that really worked. So that was kind of the leverage I took, looking at the strong creatives as a place to start. But the evolvement came through partnerships. First off was a partnership with Facebook, where we had Yuko and Rafa and Bryce really working with us day to day to encourage us to have a testing mindset. And they were there with us day to day in the support of setting up the tests and the follow through of how to measure the tests. So that was just a great mindset to start with. And then after the partnership with Facebook, it led to a partnership with Adikteev, where I was just so impressed by your commitment to providing excellence to your partners. And we couldn't have done it without you. And you worked with us to figure out just kind of the nuts and bolts of getting our data attribution to work. Like it turns out we were missing some data attribution that was affecting our numbers greatly. And so, thank you for helping us along the way to get started on the right foot. And also the creatives that you built for us were so impactful and so meaningful. And they were a big differentiator to our success with you. So
that's amazing to hear. I will definitely go back and tell our design team about that and pass that along. Thanks, Jenny. I really appreciate that. And Brett, talk to us about your approach.
I think, having Jenny work at the same company as me and you preceding me was actually wonderful for probably Double Down. I was so early in the retargeting space that most of these things just didn't exist. There wasn't...
Paint a picture for us.
Yeah,
what are we talking about?
I felt like I was, most of my spend was on Facebook Canvas and doing desktop retargeting more than anything. We were like 40% mobile at the time, so it was literally teaching my Facebook reps like how to do retargeting. We were doing it on anything and everything, and then trying to figure out what was incrementality, how to think about just setting up a campaign and improving it successful for leadership, so they had the faith in you to keep running it. And it was a big business for us back then. So it was a lot of just getting things set up when they just didn't exist. There were no dashboards. There was no one to tell me what to do. It was just like trial by fire. And then the DSPs came along after I left the company. Say this, like I've tried a lot of them along the way, and definitely settled on Adikteev as one of the better platforms that we used at scale, and it makes those problems I faced earlier on in my career much easier to work with a partner like Adikteev and Kate.
Well, it's interesting what you're talking about with setting up the measurement, making sure you can prove that. I think that's something we definitely want to touch on later as well. What are some of the things that you wish you knew before you started retargeting? I know we've all learned a lot through the retargeting process. What are some things you wish you knew?
I would say is for someone to tell me what to do. I just wish there was all the things I had nowadays. Just literally anything and everything to give me a tip and a trick to make me look good.
That's what we're looking for at the end.
Because that was definitely missing from back in the day. I would say I wish I could have done a better job looking at the future too. That was one thing. I was so into the weeds, trying to just figure stuff out, but I wish I could have just looked down the road to see, okay, this is going to come. We had a lot of great tech at some companies, and deep linking, incentivized deep linking, those were great things and tools. And I wish I could have, foreseen how to advance those along the way a little bit more to get more.
Right.
I would say the importance of being a data attribution detective and really understanding how retargeting attribution works, how reattribution windows works, making sure your settings in your MMP for retargeting are set up correctly, just to make sure you're not missing any of the attributions that could then affect your performance. We had that experience firsthand. And also just setting up the links yourself and doing the testing yourself and opening up your MMP dashboard and seeing the data come through in real time to know it's working.
Right.
And then the other important thing is don't be afraid if you're trying out a new campaign strategy and it flops. Sometimes in order to figure out what works, you first have to figure out what doesn't work.
Exactly.
And you have to embrace that process and have passion for the experience. And ultimately the outcomes will work if you do enough testing.
Totally agree. And how would you suggest measuring success for retargeting?
Sure. I would say twofold. It's important to know what's happening with your campaigns on a day-to-day basis. And so setting up your MMP attribution is so important so that you can optimize on a day-to-day basis. It also affects, if you're running creative testing, you need that attributed data that's tied to the creatives to see how that performance is doing so that you know what you're doing with your creative test.
At that granular level.
The granular level. But then you also need, on the flip side, you need the incrementality measurement to be able to answer those yes or no questions, is retargeting working? And is it working at the platform level, at the network level? And to be able to go back to your leadership team or your data team and prove to them that these are the numbers, we are net positive. Retargeting is worth investing in. You need that. Totally. But then the third piece that's also important to look at is knowing which segments have the lowest cost per returned user. I think it's important to look at those three factors when you're determining where you're going to move your budget around, where you're investing in the future.
Right. Those three are critical. And I think that second one in particular is something we've always thought a lot about, is how do we ensure that our clients can go back to their teams and prove that what we're doing is having an impact, is incremental, is not cannibalizing organic, and that's where we have our always-on incrementality platform. Yeah. And Brett, how do you view measuring success?
I think Jenny stole most of the fire there, but yeah, the ultimate battle that I've always had with my execs are do no harm. Retargeting is such an interesting space to figure out.
It's complicated. It gets complicated.
It gets complicated, yeah. And if you can show what you just mentioned, do no harm, it's incremental, it's profitable, we'd be dumb not to continue to push towards, lapsed segments, all the better. I would say, like, one of the other great things you could have, even if it's not profitable, like there are other missions that retargeting can help with. Like if you have a new feature, you might want to just do a complete burst to someone, to your general audience, to ensure, like, hey, there's something new out, maybe it'll help monetization. So there's other impacts that you can have on the business besides just sometimes being profitable.
Right. And it all kinds of feeds into one another, right? You've talked before about how user acquisition and retargeting feed into one another.
It's kind of a dangerous, I mean, not a dangerous loop, but like one of the great things, one of the things I just love about Adikteev is I get so much data that you guys pass back to me. And one of the things, one of the reports that I commonly get from these guys is where my payers, what sources they're actually in and clicking on to return to the active to the app. So I take that information and pass it back to the buying team and say, hey, here's some news sources, something that's coming up, and it becomes a full loop. It really just feeds the beast that then you can retarget again, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. These are where your high LTV users are hanging out. Go find them elsewhere, for sure. One of the fun things to talk about, I think, is creative. We all love creative. It can be so impactful. Retargeting creative, how do you approach that? What tips do you have for us?
I think it is true what they say, creative is king, and it's important to optimize, run creative refreshes frequently, and also establish a testing process. What I've found that works really well is kind of having a pathway to testing your creatives for them to then become evergreen creatives in your regular campaigns. And what I usually do is I would start off with a non-payer segment, which is a lower cost to run. And I have a KPI for that test of click-through rate. And then if those creatives win in that ad set, then I move them along to a payer ad set where I test for ROAS. And then if they perform well there, then they just move on to the evergreen creatives. And it's just a great way to find new creatives that work for your company.
It's really smart. I love that idea of testing for the CTR first and then moving to the ROAS. I'm sure that's very successful. Yeah. Brett, how about on your side?
Having the right messaging in the creative, I think, is like really paramount.
No install.
No install
now,
make sure you're
now.
tailoring it to the right audience. If you can get the granularity of the segment too, like for example, like you might have a low tier or a high tier, having that messaging to say, like, I'm going to provide an incentive potentially for each group. Different messaging is really important to say, like, you're going to get a really big incentive coming back versus maybe a lower incentive.
Yeah, and that's important to touch on. I think ads that have deep links that offer rewards, it just gives so much more encouragement to and enticement to get that user to come back. And I've seen really great success with ads that have rewards in them.
It's the fear of missing out too. It's not just the incentive. It's this fear we have of missing out.
The urgency.
So I have two more questions for you here. One important one, which is on audiences. So I think that's one of the first questions most people ask when thinking about running a retargeting program. What audiences should I run to make sure it's successful? What are your recommendations for how to define those audiences?
I would say a good place to start with is to segment like your payers and your non-payers. And then with your payers, if your audience size is large enough, you could split it into high LTV, mid LTV, low LTV. And then also figuring out what days lapsed segment you want to try. Like to start off with maybe 7 days could be a good place to start. And then through testing, you can figure out like would it make sense to start earlier, starting at 5 days or 3 days, or start at 15 days. You just kind of have to figure that out, I think, as you go along.
With that testing process. And Adikteev also helps by looking at your in-app organic data stream to understand what's the average number of days between purchasers? Like, when are your users never coming back? And that can help define that initial testing point where that begins. Brett, on your side, audiences, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I would say, like, you've touched upon most of what I would touch on. I would say, no matter what the app, if you've got a successful user acquisition campaign, there's going to be some portion of the app that's going to be targetable. And focusing on, if you're just getting into the retargeting space, set it up with your payers, your paying segments. Pick a lapse time, 7 days. Adikteev can help you just get a rudimentary campaign off the ground, no problem. But that's going to get you to the fastest, profitable, incremental point of retargeting very quickly. So I would say figure that out, and then if you want to test other audiences down the road, there's tons of opportunity. And like Jenny mentioned at the beginning, you're going to fail, but just,
embrace it.
Fail happy, I guess.
Yeah. Another kind of tangential topic I wanted to bring up that relates to audiences is that if you're working with Facebook or you have a lot of Facebook followers with your app, like your Facebook fan page, you can run boosted posts as a way to reach like more people, a broader audience more effectively for content that has short duration, like say it's a promotion or a sale. You can use your custom retargeting audiences that are already set up if you're running paid Facebook campaigns and run boosted posts to those audiences. That it's a short duration, and usually have good success with that.
We've done this at the same company, so I can attest. Like you get far more exponential reach with a boosted post on Facebook if you have the followers.
You need the followers.
You need the followers.
This is key. This is key. And it's all quite complementary, running with a DSP, with Facebook, all very complementary. It's a great tip. Okay. And now, I guess my final question. This flew by. This conversation flew by. What are the components of a successful retargeting program? What's most important?
I would say strong partnerships, both internally. Like you really need good support with your data team, your creative team. Like you can do so much more with a team mindset versus an individual mindset. So strong partnerships internally, but it's so important to have strong partnerships like with Adikteev, that they're proactive, they're hardworking, they go the extra mile, they're collaborative, that sort of thing. The next thing is good MMP support, understand how the attribution works, also enable view-through attribution to make sure you're not missing out on any attributions. The next thing is impactful and unique creatives, and that include characters or bling or rewards, deep links. And then just in general, having a testing mindset and embracing, trying new things, rolling up your sleeves, figure out what works by
figuring out what doesn't work. I don't need to say anything else. This is perfect.
Yeah.
I love that.
Oh, thanks.
Perfect.
I practiced this morning.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be everything that we previously mentioned. I think success is going to be what your company is going to be happy with. So I go back to my statement before, do no harm with your retargeting campaigns. Like make it profitable, show your execs you're doing something good for the company, and just expand the crap out of it.
Love it. Well, that's a great place to end. Thank you guys so much. It was great chatting with you today. Yeah. And we'll be over at the cabanas after this, so come by Adikteev Cabana 15. We'll be chatting about retargeting.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.